One of my favorite memories is with the Young Athletes program, and we had a parent who had been coming weekly to practices. It was a family group, and they would come every week, and they'd work with their kids, and I think it was about 8 weeks in, and the child walked for the very first time. He walked, he was just, we were doing like over under, and he actually walked from one post to the next post all by himself, and I look over and his entire family was just like bawling, and they were just talking about the fact that he would have never done this kind of stuff. They never thought he was going to do this kind of stuff, and so they were just so excited to have him, being in the Young Athletes program and involved. And so I think that's one of my favorites.
You're gonna make me cry. So my favorite moment all time was in 1987 when we had the World Games actually in South Bend. I was fortunate enough. Kevin, selected me to be a coach at Notre Dame, and my brother, who's also a special Olympics athlete, got to compete at Notre Dame. So that was extra phenomenal. And my father graduated from Notre Dame, so it was fabulous that we were all there at the same time. And it was just a wonderful experience and kind of the start of my 30-some years doing Special Olympics. So that's mine.
Well, one of my favorites, and it's one of many favorites, but it comes to mind, we have motor activities for individuals who are severely and profoundly disabled, and most of them are adults, and a lot of them in wheelchairs. And we have the Lake Park High School football team come and volunteer for us. They're out there and they're pushing the wheelchairs, and you really have to show a lot of enthusiasm and do a lot of things to get them engaged. And here are these big guys, and they are just taking their time and really getting involved with the athletes and assisting them, and that's what it's about. So.
Going to me. That's what it's about. What I was to say, and it's about the motor activities program as well. And I think it's because a lot of times with motor activities, it's the sport opportunity that sometimes those athletes don't have as many opportunities. And so we did one. It was a summer school program in a lower income area, and it was a grad school project that had coordinated it. So this was something that this program would never had anything like this before. And to be able to go there and to watch this, and it was more so watching these parents watch the success of their children was just remarkable. I mean, and it's one of those, it's funny when you do it and at what point your favorite memory comes in, because at that point it had been quite a long time, but that was one of those inspirational moments where I really thought, okay, this is what I don't see every day. Yeah. This is why we do it. It was just those parents, and they were so thankful, and this was, so many different things, just the income level, that this wasn't something that had been presented to them before, all the different aspects of it, that their child had this success that they felt that they were never going to get. It was just really neat.
This question is always the easiest one for me to answer because it's always my first memory. The reality was, it was the very first time I ever took athletes to Special Olympics, way back in my teaching days. And we had to go to Chicago. And we had to leave the Quad Cities at like 5 o'clock in the morning to be there in time, probably even earlier than that if I remember correctly. And our bus broke down on the Stevenson on the way in, and another bus came behind us, picked us up, took us in. Bus got fixed. Anyways, as the day progressed, we took our athletes to a smorgasbord for the first time, and watching these guys just have, food on top of food on top of food was fun. But moreover, in the whole process, it was like one of those educational experiences, not just for us, but everybody we came in contact with. We started heading home back to Moline, and the bus broke down a couple more times, and we finally didn't get back into Moline to be picked up by the parents until like 2 o'clock in the morning. And I thought for sure I was fired. That was it. We will never ever do this again. And instead, the parents couldn't have cared less about me or the bus. They saw their kids coming off with all their awards on. Couldn't change it.
Done.
Well, I'll go first just because I don't ever remember not doing Special Olympics. I have no recollection of my life prior to Special Olympics because my brother started, oh, I'm going to cry now, with Hiram Brownell, you know, kind of like the patriarch of Special Olympics in Illinois. And he was his PE teacher and had him doing activities when he was 3 and I was 5. So pardon me as I cry. So I got to go along because I didn't start kindergarten until I was 5.5. So I went, and it was, you know, I never really knew that there was anything wrong with my brother because he was just my brother. And my whole family did sports. Mike did sports, so it was just a natural progression. So I've done Special Olympics for 50-some years. So.
Well, I liked your phrase about not knowing anything else other than that,
Yeah.
because it does seem like that. I started out coaching in the late 70s, a team, and volunteered on committees and kind of turned into a job. But 2 things I loved the most, working with individuals with disabilities and sports, and it was just a perfect fit. And my teaching career wasn't exactly going the direction I wanted it to, so it was a really opportune chance for me, and staying with it because of the people that are involved and the reason that they're all there. The athletes and families and volunteers and coaches and sponsors, from beginning to end. When you go to an event, it's just a feeling. It's just a feeling. We're all here for the same.
We've all made great friends, lifelong friends.
I think for me, it was, I started teaching physical education for, back in the day, trainable mentally handicapped kids. I walked into a classroom where I had teenagers still doing things like Duck, Duck, Goose and Red Rover. And I said, we're not going to do this. That's not the way it should be.
Well, that's because you didn't want to do it,
Well,
Kevin, not.
basically, it was fine for the younger kids, but yeah, you get to be about 13, that's way too, yeah. So we needed to look for some sort of an option for our kids at the school. And while we were doing stuff in-house, there was no way for them to express that and for their parents to actually see how talented these kids could be. So Special Olympics became an option for us. And from the very first year, you know, it was just a matter of adding another sport and adding another sport. So our team started having their own trophy cases and things like that. And it was a growth experience from the start till today still. And I think that's probably what keeps us all in this, is we never stop growing from, you know, that opportunity in the very beginning to seeing the success of the athletes. And then also seeing people realizing, much like Jen mentioned, oh, he can do that. You know, oh, wow, there is something else my kid can do. And especially where I was at in the Quad Cities, a lot of the students we had in the school had older brothers and sisters that had been on all the football teams or basketball teams or volleyball teams. Their kids were getting successes, and now all of a sudden they were seeing this one that they never had any expectation for having those same successes, and that was just huge.
I got involved with Special Olympics as a peer partner. I grew up with Special Olympics. I mean, and I tell people that I met my most absolute best friends through Special Olympics, pardon me. But Special Olympics, I went to become a teacher and then realized that I wasn't getting the interaction and that kind of thing, and was incredibly fortunate and ended up with Special Olympics. I tell people that my husband had never been around anyone with an intellectual disability. It just wasn't something in his life. And to watch that, and then to watch my son, who then was born and grew up with it, and doesn't see anything different. We did the torch run yesterday, and he ran with everybody, and he loved it. And to know that that's what he's growing up with, and that to my husband, it was a whole new world that he had never seen. And so that's what we're exposing people to. And just as you guys said, the relationships that you have with these people who are volunteers, which one time someone asked us, can you let us know, what these volunteers do? And I pointed out that, well, they started out as volunteers, but they all became my friends. These are people who are on my Christmas card list, who I make sure that we're socializing with, not Special Olympics related throughout the year. So it's very family oriented, but it's not only just the athletes and their families who have become part of our families, but staff, volunteers, all of that.
I grew up in Special Olympics. I don't think there was a time that it was not a part of my life. I was the kid that was born and just was brought to volunteer, and wasn't lucky enough to have somebody with a disability in my family, but Special Olympics has always just kind of been a part of our family, whether supporting fundraising events or volunteering at events, and then when I got old enough, I didn't see a life without Special Olympics in it, without coaching or just being a staff member. And I think that everyone asks you what's your dream job, and I think I'm pretty close. I would like a little more money, but I get paid in other ways. So I've been able to create positions within the organization that have suited me, and I've been able to share my skills and talents, just I think like everyone else has, and have kind of found a little niche that is fantastic, and I love what I do, and I don't see myself ever not doing something along these lines, if not the same thing.
I sometimes feel like the odd man out when we hear these stories, because when I walked into my classroom for the very first time, that was the first time I ever encountered people with special needs. I had been on a different track entirely, but had the opportunity to take this position as a special ed PE teacher. And once I got in there, I realized, one of my best buddies' sister and one of my cousins, but they were always treated just like everybody else in the family, so you never ever thought about it. And so, not being very bright, I just figured that's the way you treated everybody in the classroom and everything else. And whether I've just been lucky to get away with it or what, I don't know. But the thing that everybody has said here at this table is almost the exact same. They're our peers. They're really not different at all. They may have a few things that we can offer them, but in all honesty, they're just like us. Here we go again. I've been lucky enough to put together multiple international games teams working for this office and being part of them as a coach or whatever. The most fun that we do is nothing we do but being able to watch what other people do or help build whatever it is that they're going to get to do. I know Jen feels this way every time she sees one of the the young athlete programs. I know Kathy every time she does her spring games, or Katie or Amy too. We build the things that get to have the fun stuff happen, and that to me, that's the joy of all of it.
We've had a lot of fun over the years.
We do.
We do say we work hard, play hard. So, we come together at events a lot. I know that Katie and Kevin and Amy and I work out in the field directly. We've had a lot of events where we get together and get an event, do a long event, and then it's happy hour. So, we'll be exhausted.
It's
covered in
evaluation, isn't it?
yeah,
We're
we have to
evaluating.
discuss the success of the event, and we have had just so many great times.
Because we all know where the other is coming from,
right,
so
we've
know
all-
what's
right,
involved in
we've all
putting on an
been there,
event, and if
we've,
something doesn't go right,
Right.
it's like, I know you put in X, so
Right.
many hours and your
Right.
energy and time.
And we're our own worst enemies.
Yeah.
We can't ever take time to say what we do is great. We're already moving on to the next event and talking about how we can make it better. So, when you sit back and look at all that has been done in the last 50 years, it really is phenomenal. While we've just had a little part in it, actually I think Illinois has had a huge part in it, but it really is pretty fabulous when you look at it.
And you think back to where, we had our track meet, our spring games up at Mundelein High School, and there was a residential group, a Catholic residential home for ladies, called Mount St. Joseph, and they came to the meet, and they were doing the race walk. And they're out and doing the race walk, and I don't know, Sandy and I look over, and they have like the big floppy hats and carrying balloons as they're doing this thing, and it's like they're just having the best old time. It's like, But we have come a long way from
that.
those days.
Yeah.
Not that it wasn't fun, but it wasn't exactly the.
defeel?
Well, I probably did not. But days back when they'd be come in jeans and street shoes because that's all they had. But our
Right.
athletes are so much more prepared now and trained and come looking and acting. And when you have the tools to be athletes, you actually feel like you're an athlete, and that's our goal. That's what we want
Well,
them
and
all to be.
that's really helped facilitate our, the unified explosion that we have going on, because our athletes are real athletes. And they are competing alongside their peers and beating their peers. I mean, I know I won't bowl with any of our athletes because
golf?
When you have to run something to one end of the track while another race is happening, and I'm like, he's totally outrunning me.
yeah.
Totally outrun.
Exactly. So yeah, that's what's really fabulous
You
about
weren't in
it.
the right division.
I know.
I think some of the things that happen are not necessarily even during the competitions. It's the stuff that happens outside of that. I think, and you say the unified thing, and that's truly where my passion obviously lies, but we have our partnership with the Chicago Fire, who have been amazing partners in all aspects. And I remember we do an MLS exchange program where a group of our unified athletes travel alongside the first team. They get treated like professional athletes. They fly with the fire team. We stay at the same hotel. We eat the same meals. We play the game, and we go and we travel to wherever that destination is. And the first time we did it, and we had arrived, and we were getting on the bus, and we were able to ride the same bus as the team as well to the hotel. And we had said, let's not bother them. They have their pre-game, routines. And, I was a little more stressed over just making sure everyone was quiet and sitting nicely and, not interrupting whatever routine that the MLS players had. And all of a sudden we hear 80s music coming out of the back of the bus. And they had sporadically, because this player always sits in this seat and this player always sits in this seat. And so we hear playing the start of Name That Tune happening. And we go, and I turn around and I look, and Bastian Schweinsteiger, the star of the Chicago Fire, is playing 80s music, Name That Tune, with our Special Olympics athletes. And so it has to be one of my favorite things that I've ever seen, because you just don't get to see that interaction every day. But, it's an opportunity that our athletes have had, and they were all of them, every single one of them smiling ear to ear.
Yeah. We took athletes to Park City, Utah for Winter Games in '85. And this was this early winter of '85. And we had invited Jim McMahon to be the honorary head coach of the Illinois team. Now, this is the same year they win the Super Bowl. He traveled with our people and did everything we asked him to. And when the national office asked him, he checked with us first. He was great. His family was great. He was wonderful with all of our people. And he was not the guy that you saw on TV or the person that was, selling ads and had to have, the goofy stuff that he did. He was wonderful. And every one of our kids from that team for years afterwards would talk about Jim McMahon and how down to earth he was, being one of us, just being one of the guys. And he was that way with the coaches at night and the athletes during the day. And it generates that memory, but it also generates now for all these other people the same memory across the board. And he's not unique in that. We've had that experience every time we've done something with somebody that could just blow us off and not, you guys aren't that important. It's just the opposite. They buy in completely.
Hi, I'm your child. Yes. The thing that keeps me here is watching the growth of the athletes. Because so many that were just starting when I began, and now they're out of high school, and it's just watching their growth through the years and how much they've been able to accomplish and their goals, how the goals have changed for each one of them. So that's what keeps me here. I keep thinking I'm going to retire, and then I'm like, nah, I can't leave her yet. She can do it. So, but that's it.
Yeah, I agree. I think, we've those of us who've been here a long time have seen our athletes come full circle from being, 6 and 7 year olds, maybe at young athletes or at motor activities, growing into adulthood, and even some of them, unfortunately, coming to the end of their lives. But it's been exciting for me to see the growth in their physical well-being, and how that's really developed so much for people with disabilities. And you can't help but think that Special Olympics has a big factor in that, just, because they're doing physical activity. They're not sitting at home doing nothing. They're not in an institution, and our athletes their health care is so much improved, and, we have healthy athletes, and that's really helping to identify other issues that they may or may not have. So, our athletes are living longer lives, so it's fabulous.
And I think also the social network that they've built with the families and with, they're going out and going to movies and hanging out with their friends and that they've met through Special Olympics, and the parents become friends and, go on trips together and cover for each other when they need somebody to help, to help babysit or help watch, or,
Absolutely.
it's just, that is an amazing networking opportunity for our families, because our individuals, when they get to be adults, Unified Champions schools are awesome for high school kids, but they all grow up and get to be adults, and at some point, some of those connections aren't always there. So it's nice to have that Special Olympic family connection that you've made throughout. So my kid's just like your kid, and there's some comfort in being able to do social things and that kind of thing with them as they get older. So, yeah.
Come out and see it.
Yeah.
That's what I tell my volunteers too. If they're kind of apprehensive about, spending time and volunteering at some of our events, I'm like, just come out and see it. There's something going on all the time. Go out and see a practice. Hook them up with a local coach and let them, come out and just see stuff and introduce their kid around. And that usually is, the fantastic opportunity in a way for them to get involved.
I think up north, we're probably more fortunate than many regions because we have so many of the special recreation associations. And so many times that response to that parent is, you have multiple options. Take a look at what your local park district is doing, your special recreation is doing. See how many other kids of the same age and the same abilities are, getting services through these options. And then the other part of that is what are your other kids doing? Seriously, how long did you wait before you put your son or daughter into Little League or whatever? Do not see this kid as being any different than the rest of them in the family. It'll pay off for that kid, it'll pay off for their sisters and brothers, and it'll pay off for you. But you really have options out there, so don't be afraid to test them.
I think one of the things that I say to parents that, it just makes them stop and think, I'm like, are you holding your child back because you're afraid? Because I think a lot of the parents, they just don't put their children into those situations where they're unsure. And it's not because the child's unsure, it's because the parent's unsure. So I think a lot of times getting past the obstacle of the parent fear is the big problem.
And I think a lot of times our Special Olympics parents are wonderful advocates for the athletes, but they are so helpful to other parents who are starting out in a program or who have. I personally know a lot of parents who work with newborn groups or youth groups that are the people that say, just come out and play with as they're young, come out and play. And that parent who has that fear at first, that fear is eased because they are seeing as Amy had said, the child that's like theirs, that this is, the fear that what they had at first is, oh my gosh, they're gonna do this. And I was at something last week, and it was just another one of those neat feelings where it was a mom who, her daughter was just turning 6, and she was like, and we're in the north, but it was a rural area, and so she didn't have as many opportunities. And there was an athlete who, but her daughter had Down syndrome, and the athlete that was there that was doing some of the demonstrations had it. And it was funny because I was talking to the mom, and they were in an area that they could just play, and they were doing rhythmic gymnastics, and the athlete started showing her everything, and she was working with her, and it was just this neat thing that the mom stepped back and was like, I can't wait for her to get involved in this. That in her, I think not only just the sport aspect of it, but she at that point was seeing all of the opportunities that her child would have.
Opportunities and potential. There's
Yes, that's what it is. That it's
unlimited potential.
Yes,
for-
and those moms then started talking, and she started talking to her about how, you know, when they're younger and just a little bit that, you know, she hadn't been as verbal, and it was just, you watch different light bulbs, you know, that happened, and it was neat.
I would add that we have an option for everyone.
That is true.
Regardless of your interest category or your ability level or what your disability, you know, there's something that we have that you can participate in. And so, you know, that's something else that I would just add to a family, you know, or to a parent that I was talking to, is just saying, we'll find something. Well, we have something that you will find that makes you happy.
I had a family when I was still teaching in the Quad Cities whose all of his brothers and sisters had been star athletes. The sister in an independent track group, brothers were all-state football players, the whole thing. And mom and dad just could not figure out what they were going to do with Billy. And I was just like, let him go out in the backyard and play with the rest of them. They'll show him what to do if you let him get out in the backyard. And sure enough, I mean, it was one of the few times somebody listened to me. But it was, and the dad came back, you know, the next year when we started school in the fall, and he said, you wouldn't believe how many baskets Billy can make in the backyard now. And I'm like, probably could have always made them, but, you know, the fact that you guys were okay in letting him go, and maybe getting a bump or a bruise, and maybe getting dirty, and, you know, maybe falling down, and, you know, all this kind of stuff was huge. And as it turned out, Bill was probably one of my best athletes, but it was probably always there. He just needed the opportunity to do it.
I was gonna say, and I just talked to somebody about this. Like I said, I got involved with Special Olympics in high school. We had a phenomenal program. I mean, I was incredibly blessed to be a part of the program that I was part of. And I had an athlete that I worked with a lot, just one-on-one. And one day we were practicing, and it just seemed so little, but we were doing sit-ups. And so at that point, we're doing sit-ups and you're counting, and I'm very chatty all the time. So I'm talking to the person next to me, and he's doing his sit-ups. I'm like, come on, and I lost count. And so I started back up where I thought we were, and he stopped, and he was like, no, this is where I was. And the funny part is it was just that moment of, no, this is where I was. And then he was really funny, because then all of a sudden he had just gotten so into it. And it sounds like just a nothing moment, but it was one of those things that for me, I was like, you know what, it wasn't anything. But he was like, this is what I'm into. And it was just a little bit of the, you know what, for me as a high schooler, I'm like, pay more attention, do
he's
this,
all in.
be more present in the things that are happening right now around you. And it was just, and like I said, very little, but I'll always remember I did not count Mike's sit-ups right. And it just gave me be a little more present and, thing. So.
Yeah, mine was definitely my first job out of college, and I worked at an adult facility for people with disabilities, and I was just a recreation coordinator. I too had a degree in PE, but I was smart enough that I wasn't going to teach. I knew that because I really didn't like kids. So, but you know what? Give me a child or an adult with disabilities, and you know what? They're just the most fantastic people to work with. So. So yeah, I started working there, and I got involved with Kevin O'Brien, and believe it or not, he did keep me employed, or did hire me, I should say. But it's been a fantastic ride, and it's just a great organization to be involved with.
I talk about the torch run, and while I've not really had any kind of an aspect of involvement in the torch run, other than, you know, we've made relationships with police officers, and now I get involved and I do activities with them and join them in their runs like they've been all week and things like that. But I'll never forget the first time I saw the torch run into summer games. And I said, and every single time I get a little choked up when I see it.
Lights go
And
down.
I'll know it's time for me to retire when I watch the torch run in and I don't get a little choked up because of it. And so that'll be the time that I'm ready to, I think, move on. But
It's never going to happen.
Definitely.
that was my
Definitely.
aha moment. That was when I got hooked, and I'm reminded of it all the time when I see that torch go by.
Absolutely. Every game when that athlete carries a torch in, or lights the cauldron, just unforgettable.
I don't know if I ever really had an aha moment, but I realized somewhere along the line when I was teaching that I'm getting to be the same gym rat that I was at 5 years old, now at 35 years old, and it doesn't get any better than that. You know, I'm getting to be the same kid, you know, and here I am now multiple years afterwards, and it's the same feeling all the time, you know, and you know, so maybe I'm Peter Pan, I'm just not going to grow up, but you get that opportunity to do something that, you know, just kind of gives you that light up every once in a while that you don't expect, because it never comes when you really want it to. It always comes when you probably need it the most, you know, but so maybe there's just a never-ending, you know, aha moment for us many times.
I have a lot of small moments. Probably one that stands out in my mind is, I believe it was 2007 World Games were in China. Is that the right year?
Yes.
I believe so. And we had a very young athlete from Mount Vernon that had gone over, had just turned 16. We were all concerned about the fact that he was so young, to be gone so long. But very shy young man too. So he was just one of those that always looked at the ground when he talked to you, and very little conversation at that. But I remember when I picked him up at the airport when they came back, and it was a 2-hour ride home for him. So, and I thought, oh, this is going to be quiet, and if I just pull information out of him, I'll be doing well. But he got in the car and he started talking about his experiences, and it had nothing to do with track and field or how well he did in the relay. It had to do with how beautiful the dragonflies were. Yeah, and how much he enjoyed making dumplings with his host family. It was just, the whole ride home, it was these kinds of things, the geckos that he saw in the zoo. And so it was just those experiences that had nothing to do with his purpose being there. And he did well in his sport, but that wasn't what stayed with him. So I think that was just one of those things like, wow, I'll never go to China. You know, this young man's been to China and he's experienced all this firsthand. And I'll never be there probably.
I think one of the things about Special Olympics I've learned over the years, and I've been very fortunate, I've gotten to do a lot of things and be on different rules committees and be on different teams and all that kind of stuff. I think as long as we continue having open dialogue of what people with special needs can do, it's endless. Our imagination right now is nowhere near what it can be just 10 years from now. There will be that many more experiences to be shared, to be criticized, to be fixed, to be, you know, everything that goes along with making sure an organization continues to move forward. We're very lucky because this organization is always doing that. We argue, we compromise, we do all sorts of stuff, but we always do it knowing...
Really? Compromise?
Well, sometimes. But we're always doing it knowing that there's somebody that's going to be doing this next year and the next year and the next year. I don't think any of us ever sit in a meeting and talk about, well, this has got to stop right now. It's more of a conversation of, okay, maybe this isn't perfect, but how do we go ahead and put the bow tie on that and make it really work? And so for somebody that has been around a long time and seen all the progress we've made, I don't think there's anything that literally can stop us except ourselves. And when we quit being imaginative and when we quit being critical and when we quit caring, that's when we need to worry. But as long as we're constantly double checking everything we do and finding a better way to do it, it's limitless. Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
we, as long as we keep it athlete-centered and bring the athletes into more of a management of our events and all of our activities, I think that's what it's really about. you know, if you would have asked me this 20 years ago, I never would have dreamed that we'd have an athlete on our board of directors, or have athletes helping us run competitions, and having them, you know, global messengers, be the co-chairs of the opening ceremonies committee at my spring games. And, you know, okay, it might have taken 20 minutes longer, but who cares? Opening ceremonies is like the greatest thing ever. So, you know, as long as we keep that and keep it athlete-centered and athlete-focused, I think, you know, we'll continue to be here in 50 years.
I think going along with that and keeping the mission in mind, the original mission with sports and our focus on sports and all the things that sports brings to the athletes, families, volunteers. There are so many other things that have come out of it, not just the sports aspect, but that as our mission, to provide those quality opportunities and competitions and ways for them, athletes, to develop and grow and challenge themselves and to have expectations that are normal and not condescending, and to expect things out of them so they meet our expectations and exceed them all the time. And we just need to keep that as our driving force, I think.
The fact that parents seek us out, or if they're questioning us, I guess my hope is in the next 50 years that doesn't have to happen as much. And it's funny because we live within this, so sometimes you're like, how do you not know about this? So I question that sometimes. But the perfect world scenario would be that 50 years from now, people don't have to seek us out. That it is something that is so part of their regular, you know, just their everyday life.
That it's just like T-ball at the
yes.
YMCA or at the Park District. It's just an option there that everybody knows about, and that they don't have to call us and seek us out and email us and say, where can I get involved?
Well, and I think we've come from a time back in the 60s where doctors were telling parents you need to shelter these kids and stuff, to where now doctors, when children are born with special needs, are actually saying, here's some options out here for you and things to look for and stuff. We still have some doctors that are a little stiff, but the reality of it is now there's a lot more awareness of what kids can do versus what they can't do.
I'll just say just another favorite moment of mine. It's kind of just shows you our athletes' dedication. We had an athlete in the late 80s who overslept, and he missed his ride coming to our spring games. And we were hosting it in Galesburg, Illinois, and he lived in Monmouth. But the road between the two cities is very well traveled, so he hopped on his bike and rode 16 miles to Galesburg by himself without telling his parents to make it to our competition on time. So that's, you want to talk about athlete dedication. How many of our kids, my son never would have done that. He'd be like, get up, Mom, get me to the, get me, I missed the bus, whining about it, and call the coach and tell him I'm sorry, So this athlete, he just did that, rode on a little 2-lane highway, all the way to Galesburg to make it, and made it in time to compete. That's pretty fabulous.
That's awesome.
That's some determination.
We've talked about a couple different times about the core people that do these things, and we have a core here, and we do get together, and we do party, and we do visit with one another, and we talk about stuff late into the night, and usually it's with some pretzels or something. But there's a lot of conversation that goes on to make sure we're all doing the same thing and we're doing it correctly. And it's not scripted and it's not set up, but it's all the time. Whenever we get together, we do the same thing. We do the same thing just in my region with my committees and things like that. It literally is a social network that we've created that we're all not just proud of, but really invested in. And we want to keep it going all the time. Which I think keeps a lot of people on staff, because you've got somebody that has your back. And quite honestly, if you don't feel that, those are the folks that don't stay around, because they need a different experience than we can do. But those of us that have been around find that experience to be the growth experience we all need to keep doing what we do. And for some of us, that's been a long time meeting other people to help their growth experience. But for many, it's a great introduction to how you actually work with other adults and get things accomplished. And so I think we're all very fortunate in that, and it is a real part of why we're very successful in what we do.
And going and just seeing different states and different things, it's one of those, sometimes you're in a meeting here and someone says, people compliment Illinois, and they talk about what we do and that it's, you know, so many things that we do other states don't do, or things that we're able to offer. And going to these other things and seeing different states, you go and you realize, well, this is very much so. A lot of those things happen because of the staff that sometimes, and this is not in regard to other Special Olympics programs, but in other jobs, so many people are trying to climb a ladder. And they see that top thing and what's going to get them there. And I think that within our staff, a lot of times you go, this worked for me, here, let me share this with you. Mm-hmm. Or you see somebody struggling, something's happening, and you want them to be successful, so we make sure that you reach out or you do those kind of things. We have jobs that are can be incredibly stressful at times, and that's just the nature of the beast in in not only nonprofit but events. The best thing about that is, and it's one of those that it used to be, oh, it's not your busy time, except lately it's become, you know, everything's the busy time. Everything's the busy time. But in that regard, the good things outweigh anything that you're like, oh my goodness. You know, you look at it and go, but then I'm going to go do this and it's just going to be awesome. And to say it's going to be awesome sounds so juvenile, but anybody that's here and has experienced it, you're going to go and you're going to watch the person finish on the track that you're like, oh my gosh, come on, just finish. What's his name? Everybody, you know, and then you do that. You go as you're at the finish line and the guy is not coming and they're not progressing, and you look on that sheet and you tell everybody around you his name's Jimmy and just cheer for him. And that's what, you know what, life sometimes you're like, man.
How many
okay.
people do you see, but I know you guys are all young, but in 20 years, will you guys be sitting around crying about your job? About how fabulous
And that,
it
you know.
was? I mean, seriously, you know.
You're so right, Kathy.
Yeah, and it is. It's fortunate. It is. I tell people all the time, I'm
we-
so
you know,
fortunate to
we
have
are
a job.
Absolutely, and we've how many people stay in the same job a long time? You know, I don't know why we stay in it so long sometimes, you know, because we work ungodly
Weird
hours and long
weird
hours. But you don't hear us complaining about it. You know, when you have a job you love and you make a difference, man, you know, for Gina, you're young, it doesn't get any better. You know, 30 years from now, maybe you'll be saying that. So I wish that everybody could have that.
I think the good thing about the 50th anniversary and the time that we've been spending with it and the reflection that's been happening is that, at least personally, I've been able to see the impact that I've made on some people, you know, over the years. Like, I've had more people come up to me lately and just say thank you, like, for what you've done or the impact that you've made, or thank you for asking and for including our family. Or I had a coach that came up to me and said, Jen, I don't know if you remember, but you asked me to come coach when I was a volunteer. When I was a student teacher at school, you asked me to come be a coach. And I said yes, and you included me, you made me a part of things. And now 15 years later, she's, you know, running a program for a whole entire school district and, you know, has had multiple opportunities. But, you know, I had that moment with her where she said thank you, because, you know, you get to appreciate some of those things as well. And that's why we're here.
Yep.
Yes.
And that's why I have to leave.
No.
I'm supposed to be over the track.
Time to go
I'm
to the
sorry.
track. Time to go to the pool.
Yeah.
Yes.